It's the Wednesday before Turkey Day, man.
Right?
We're live.
We're live.
Yeah. Did you like the thumbnail picture?
Dude, that was the best. I love Yosemite Sam, man. That's awesome. He's good stuff, dude. He's like my man. You know what I mean?
I was like, wow, we're getting to do a Wednesday night Tech Talk live right before Thanksgiving. So I got to have some kind of really cool Thanksgiving thing going on.
It was good, man. That's one of those that I took a picture of on the screenshot and I put on my computer at work. I thought that was awesome. It's good stuff.
Oh, sweet. Well, if you want, I can just email them to you, man. Because I got to create them and then put them on my desktop and then I stick them up there, you know. But it's just one of those things. That's well, we got a crowd already in here. So Colleen Tebow is in here. She was the first one in. Uncle Squirrel still blaming squirrels. The one-eyed cat, which is Don English. Ed's machine. It looks like maybe Ed already bailed. I don't know. After 1 minute. So David James is here. The Dougster is here. So have no fear. The Dougster is here. He says, "Free beer, everyone who needs a cold one."
Right.
I'll take one. Family coming from Northeast Dragway and North Carolina, and which appears to be the last remaining AHRA track at the moment. So let's see what I can do about grabbing some more tracks this winter. And I hate starting over. It's rough, man. Let's see.
How you doing, Wendy? Thanks for saying hi.
Yeah, well, Wendy's in here too. So I guess that's it we got for a crowd right now. 15 watching. Don't forget to smash that like button and get your questions, your Tech Talk questions ready and start throwing them at us left and right.
Yeah.
Until you do, Shane and I are just going to start talking about just random stuff. Right?
Here's some random stuff. I'm actually going to be building my Gen 3 Hemi for my Desert Dart, my road race card this weekend. I did the short block, you know.
You're finally starting on it then.
Yeah. You know, it's one of those things that I had to find the right time. Like it had to be like I wanted to do it. So I built a short block. I made the video last week, but this week I'm going to be bolting heads on. I'm going to be doing actual compression. I got 3 different gaskets, head gaskets. You know, I think one's 40, one's 30, one's 20. So depending what the CC of the head comes out to be, I'm going to bolt those things on this week, and we're going to call it good.
Sweet. Sounds like a plan. This week I got going on, let's see, Buck Does It. Buck from Buck Does It is going to be stopping in Mr. Rodder's neighborhood, and he's doing a parts run for his Buick 455 build. So I got him a camshaft, I got him some valve covers, intake manifold, HEI distributor, and I whipped him up a famous Mr. Rodder's neighborhood Buick big block timing cover with all the oiling mods. So he should be doing all right with that. It's a 1970 370 horse cam. So I mean it's a stock cam, right? So it won't be seeing the zillion RPM, but you know, have no fear. If it does, it's going to have oil on the bearings.
That's right. Have no fear. Torque is here.
Yeah, it will be here. And I told him, like, get ready, man, because that thing is going to spit that 7.5-inch rear end out like it wasn't even there. But,
it's one of those things that, like, it might as well be a gasoline style of an electric motor. As soon as it turns, it's like instant torque. There it is.
We did a half a rotation, 500 foot-pounds, right?
Done.
Yeah. Let's see. Doug Narton says D150 update got those pesky ball joints out, and the upper ball joints, and now I'm fighting with the upper control arm bushings. Yay! Got the positive camber upgrade. Hope it will make my truck handle better. I tell you what I've noticed from Mopar's upper ball joints seems to be ones that they eat, and man, it would have to make a huge improvement because I remember seeing some of them cars with the tires would lay over, almost sideways, like parallel to the road. So how they do that, I don't know, and they still function. They would just have to, I guess, eat tires really bad.
You know, mine does pretty good, but you know, the biggest thing about drag racing a dart or anything is when they come up and the tires hit the ground. If you watch every single YouTube video of them, they do this number as soon as they come back on the ground.
Yeah, I don't even know what they call that. That's not bump steer, is it?
No, that's just going crazy. I don't know what it is, but it's actually the I believe it's the idler, the idler bar.
Oh,
The
the idler
idler
arm.
arm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
allows
because
it to do that.
it goes up and down, so the pitman arm is still frozen, but the idler arm is just kind of moves up and down, and so that's what causes it to do its thing.
Huh. Well, Dizzy Izzy's in the house. He's the our burnout professional from the No Name Nationals burnout competition. Dizzy Izzy, if you didn't see it, he let it all hang out and then backed it up for round 2 and hung it out some more.
Nice.
So he was definitely, the pucker factor was high when he was out there doing burnouts. So Fred 74 is here washing his hands. Let's see. Fab Race Mon repeat. I might actually get to work on my car this weekend. Oh, you finally your own car, huh?
Right. Isn't it funny how that works? People start, hey, can you do this for me? Hey man, can you do this? I'll pay you for it. And all of a sudden you're doing other people's cars, you're looking at yours and it's collecting dust. And you're like, man, I can't even work on my own crap now.
Yeah. See, Danny Boyd, he says that front end work is tough going. About 2 years ago, my old white Ford truck that I drive to all the AHRA events, I was coming home and I hit something on some railroad tracks in Lebanon, Tennessee, and it caused the truck to literally jump like 3 feet in the air. And when it came down, it had bent the tie rod bushing, and it hit that tire so hard because it bent that 40, or it bent the tie rod, the bushing. It bent the tie rod at a 45-degree angle, right? And then it broke the steering box and it broke the column. And I drove it home, and I noticed it was pulling really hard to the right. And I'm like, wow, that doesn't make any sense. And I got out and the rotor was glowing, right? And I'm like, holy crap, what the hell is going on here? Well, the caliper got jammed when it hit the front end, and it locked that caliper up. But it took me like 18 months to get the front end sorted out. I ended up having to do an I-beam and the bushings, and there was so much stuff that was screwed up from that. I probably should have junked the truck, but she's still going.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. But let's see. The James and James show just popped in. And let's see. We're starting to get the crew from the No Name Nationals in here.
Right.
Let's see. Bicycle Guy 111 says, hey, guys, I picked up an Edelbrock dual 500 manifold, non-air gap, set up with the carbs. Think it will work on my very mild, low compression 350 progressive or 1-to-1 linkage.
Progressive.
Yeah, progressive for sure, especially since it's really mild.
Yeah, 100% progressive.
Yeah, but I think it would actually work because those carburetors. What's good about the Edelbrock is what's good about the Quadrajet. What's good about the thermal quad? It's a vacuum secondary carburetor, so that those air doors only open up as much as air as the engine can actually use. Right. So even though it's 500 CFM capable, if it's only going to need 431 CFM, it's only going to open that air door as far as it needs till it balances at 0. So I think it'd probably be a fine setup. Now, when you mat that sucker to the floor, I'm sure your fuel economy just will go out the window. But the fun factor and just the bitchin' look would be way high. So,
yeah. No, that'd be good.
Shane, what do you think?
Oh no, progressive, 100%. Yeah, I had a buddy who had a Camaro, and we used to street race with him. He had this is in San Diego, and he had a basically one of those setups on it. And it was like a 10.5-to-1 compression. He had the dual 500s on it, and they were doing a 1-to-1 on it, and it just would bog. It'd just be nothing until about 3,000. I was like, let's just get a progressive on that thing, and we actually set it up so that way it was. The front 2 barrels were like quarter throttle. Then the second front 2 barrels would come in about half. And then after half, everything would open up, all 8 barrels. And that actually seemed to work the best because it wasn't really a high compression either.
Was it smooth though?
Yes, it was smooth. It was smooth-ish because remember, you're opening up a lot if you just hammered on it,
Right. Yeah. Your vacuum would go to 0 and then all of those barrels would be open. So you can even pull fuel.
It almost would create pressure in the manifold because there's so much fuel dumping into it. It would come up.
From your fuel pump, 4 pounds of pressure.
You have a positive in there, but other than that, no, it was actually good. It was some of those things you had to roll into it, but yeah, it was fine. And I used to street race him quite a bit. It was like that was like our playing field. Like, how was my car running? Let's run and let's see how we're doing. Did he beat me? Did I beat him? And that's how we started off the weekend.
All right. Well, we actually have another question here.
Sure.
Tonight we're on a roll. Jonathan Couchy says, couldn't figure out why my project truck kept dying. Tore apart the Edelbrock 600. It was full of junk. Cleaned it out, and what does it say? It is put together now. What's the difference between metering rod and jets?
Ooh, that's a big question. That's actually more than we actually have time here for. Email me and I'll explain to you how to do that, because the biggest thing is I actually have some of these books that depending on the carburetor, it tells you, do you want more jet? Do you want more cruise? Do you want more power? And it tells you where to change things at. But the difference is that how I tune these is with area. So I'll do your, pi r squared, and then on the jet, and then I'll do the pi r squared for the metering rod on the power side, and I'll do it on the cruise side. And on my Slant 6, it wants right around 6 point something at power, and it's looking at about 3.00 for like a cruise. And then I use the spring for how it wants to pop open. So the difference is that the jet is basically something you can't change really easily, but then the metering rods, they make them in like, say, a 75 to like all the way down to a 37, then they'll make like a 73 down to a 37. So it really depends on the discrepancy you want from cruise to your power circuit. On my Slant 6, it needs to have a massive power, massive discrepancy. So right now I got like 75 in the front, 37 as far as on the rod. So I have a 75, 37 on a 98, I believe, as far as my setup. And you can change that with the rods real easily, but changing the jet, you got to take the whole top off. This goes deep. Really deep.
Quadrajets, okay, so the rule of thumb is this, when you're dealing with the Quadrajet, is you find the right jet for the engine. I mean, the pi r squared method gets you in the ballpark. That's where you start, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. And what you'll do is you change the jet, you put the one in there that you do the basic math for, and you change the jet 1 up, 1 down, or 2 up, 2 down, whatever you want to do. And then you can determine what it really likes, okay? Because each one of them is going to be different. I mean, the math only gets you so far. Each engine is completely different, and you're looking at something that's like let's say it's a worn out old motor that you just keep on the road, and it keeps all the fluids inside, right? And the cylinders are not going to be balanced like they were when they were new. And that's just because of, wear on your guides, wear on the valve seals, and so now it's sucking a little bit of oil, so it needs excess fuel to compensate for that oil. And there's all kinds of factors that go into that thing. But you find the jet that your combination likes, and then metering rods. So the way I look at it is jet is a large fuel change, and the metering rod is a minute fuel change.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, 100%.
So what you're doing is you're taking it from you got this much area unknown, and you find the jet in between that it likes, and then you play with metering rods thereafter. Because, like Shane said, when you're changing the jet, it's a pain in the butt. You got to pull the whole top of the carb off, right? But when you find the right jet, you're usually okay. And what I mean by right jet is like when you're going down the road, it has decent power. When you mat it, that's where the jet is really the most important, because the way those metering rods work is they sit inside the jet, right? And it doesn't matter. It never comes out of the jet fully. It always goes to the very tip of the metering rod. And most of the time, the metering rod tips are all the same size. It'll be like your power size, right? So it might be like, say, 20 thousandths or 26 thousandths or something like that, right? And your entire array of metering rod selection will always generally have the same tip on them. Now, there is some variations, and I don't know much about Carters or Edelbrocks, and they may be different. They may have variations of different ones. I'm not sure. But once you find that it's not spark knocking, it's not detonating, and it's pulling all the way through, that's probably your pretty close jet. That's the one it likes. Okay, and then you start playing with metering rods, and you can do that outside the carburetor. Just have like a handful of them, and you stuff 2 of them on there. Go drive it around. Take it through a parking lot, cruise through a parking lot, take it up a hill, put it under load, mat it, beat on it a little bit, and see how it does. Because you'll find that when you have the wrong metering rod, generally drivability is the one that's affected the most. It'll have a dead spot, it'll have a weak spot, and not so much with the jet. The jet, you can tell you got it off right away because it's such a large amount of fuel that it can control. But that's it in a nutshell for me.
Same type of thing for me. How I did it with because on the Edelbrocks, they have a lot of the smaller ones on the smaller end of the jet than they do actually with the bigger ones. They only have like say 5 for the cruise circuits. Tons of jets, but they have a big selection of as far as the small end. So what I try to do is I try to get the cruise correct, and then what I do is I start going smaller and smaller and smaller on the power side as far as on the metering rod until you get down to the smallest one. You can't make a change anymore. Then I'll go up in jet and then up in metering rod, so that way I get the same amount of area for the cruise. Then I start working my way down again. I start going down and down and down. Now, once again, I'm dealing with the Slant 6, so it's totally different than what you're dealing with. But
I'm sure just a small, minute change on the Slant 6 makes a huge difference.
Yes, very huge. You were talking like, as far as your area, 3.125 times 10 to the negative 3 as far as an area, and then a 3.003. You're talking about less than a couple hundred, 100,000, less than 100,000s there, and it made a huge difference. It went from like one area was 15.1 cruising down the road. The other one was like 13.5, so it's it's massive.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan Couchy says, yeah, but the Edelbrock is an AFB, I believe. Anyway, it's really easy to change to metering rods and springs. That's what I was digging on was you can remove them from the top, right? Isn't it just like one screw and that whole arm pulls off and you
just twist it to the side. Yep.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, it works great. So that's why I always try to get the cruise right. Once you get the cruise right, then it's really easy to set the power side, because the power side then is just changing the small end of the metering rod, because you're really in the cruise end more than you are in the power end. So once you're cruising around, once you're getting that like say 14.1 or 13.8 that you're trying to find for the cruise, then it's just a matter of finding the right small end. Is it 42? Is it 37? Is it 48, and then you just put that in, and then I tend to find a place with some like sloping hills, and then I'll roll into the throttle, and then as long as I can stay right in that like say 14.2, and then it doesn't drop all the way down to 9, then if it does that, then I'll go to like say a little lighter spring, and then a lighter spring will just keep it down into the circuit longer until it wants to pop up. And then, so that way I can actually control when it pops out now. So it works really good. And I always tend to run a little smaller, lighter spring than typical, because I'm trying to get mileage. So I don't want that thing to pop out. I want to control. That way I can push on it and actually pop it up and then control when I want the power to hit.
Well, that's definitely a good tip. QJet stuff is, I'm not too familiar with the Edelbrocks. I've never had one. But the Quadrajets, a majority of them came with the same tip. It was always the power tip was always 26 thousandths, right?
Oh, gotcha.
You had some later ones that were like 31, but it requires like usually they're fatter at the top in the cruise section as well as the tip, and so then you got to go up in jet size because your area is what you're changing, right? The whole surface area. But all right, let's see. Metering rod creates a sort of variable jet. Yes, it does. That's what helps your curve, right? Yeah. And it's not completely dependent upon air across the jet or vacuum across the jet. So let's see. Disney Izzy says, check out my gas mileage challenge video, my 5.7 Dodge with getting 23.3 miles per gallon at 71 miles per hour. Well, yeah, slow her down to 67. I bet you it gets even better.
That's right. It gets probably to 27.
Yeah. Well, and happy Thanksgiving if I haven't said it already.
Yeah.
That's coming up tomorrow. Everybody's going to be, what is it, turkey coma. So it's just, and Jason's Garage is saying the same thing. Happy Thanksgiving, y'all.
Yep.
Oh, for those of you that are traveling, stay safe because, man, this is one of those times of year where it's like you don't know what you can get for the weather and you don't know what you can get for the drivers because some of them don't even leave their house until Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Have you been on the roads at all today? Have you gone outside?
No, I have been outside, but I've been in the garage. I didn't go anywhere.
Man, people are stupid out today. So,
well, that's normal. When you live in Tennessee, I found that the drivers here are like
zeros.
You know how like when you go somewhere and sometimes you're like, oh damn, I left my hat at home. These people are like, I left my brain at home, and
Everything.
they were insane, dude. I mean, insane. Hey, that light's been red for 5 minutes. Like, holy crap! Really?
We have this freeway. It's the 240 freeway. Now where I live at, I got to take the 385 and I get on the 240, right? And I got to go 4 miles from 385 on the 240 to Lamar, right? And in that 4 miles, it's a 55 mile an hour posted zone. And in Tennessee, the fast lanes are not on the left hand side. It's the extreme right and the extreme left. It's a 4-lane road. It's the only place around here that's got 4 lanes, right? So the middle 2 lanes do 70. The outer 2 lanes do 90 plus.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, it's
that's the thing. That's the downside of living in a big city. Where I live at, I mean, like the posted speed limit's like 55. I'm the only one ever driving like 65 or 70. Most people are driving like 45, right?
Yeah.
But it's a 1-lane road. You don't have to fight anybody. There's no ridiculous, crazy speeding and traffic and all that stuff. But yeah, that's the downside of living in a city. People that literally take your life into their hands as they drive by at 100 miles an hour plus. Well, Bicycle Guy 111 says, what about making homemade jets for the idle feed restrictors, the air bleeds located on the boosters for an Edelbrock?
Making a homemade jet.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to change the bleed side, the air bleed side, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could, but I mean that thing pretty much seals up tight as it is. It's not like a Holly where it's a little different. That thing, I mean, you could, but I don't see the point in it because the way that thing's designed and where those things are at, they're picking up the fuel, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess you could. I'm not sure what you would gain personally, but yeah, you could do it.
I don't know where they're at on an Edelbrock. Like I said, I've never had one.
They're all the way down the bottom, and they pick up really on the jet essentially. So on the it's one of those things. I'll take some pictures and I'll show it to you.
Well, is it one of those deals where if you were to modify it, you couldn't unmodify it?
Yeah, pretty much. Once it's modified, it's done.
Yeah, because I've seen Quadrajet lids like that. Because they have, there's virtually, on the later carburetors, there's a 50 thousandths air bleed, there's a 70 thousandths air bleed, and then there's a 125 thousandths air bleed. The 125 thousandths was used on like 305 Chevrolets and stuff like that. Small cubic inch motors generally. And what you find is you find somebody that has taken that 70 thousandths and drilled it out to a 90. You can't un-90 that, not easily. You can stick some little pieces of copper tube down in there and press them in, and then you re-drill the hole. But it's not easy. So, well, Danny Boyd's saying Florida is an overcrowded madhouse. And that may be the place where everybody moved. When I lived in Jacksonville, it wasn't too bad. I don't know how it is in the rest of the state. But let's see. Clayton's Toolbox is 26 thousandths too big of a top ring gap on a 4030 bore. It's an NA small block Ford, but we'll use nitrous in the future. Forged pistons, Molly rings. What would you suggest for a second ring gap? 29 thousandths?
How much nitrous? That's the big key. Is how much nitrous? Yeah. In most of the rings, because depending on the steel of the ring, it's going to expand and contract differently. So you got to look at your ring manufacturer. But usually 28 to 30 is where I would be for something that would be like, say, a 200 shot for a 4030 bore. But 26 is not bad if you're going to be running like, say, 150 shot. You know, if you're going to go over
that
that, I
actually
would
gives you
really,
plenty of room. Yeah, that gives
yeah,
you plenty.
that's going to give you plenty of room. And then for the second ring gap, you know, usually 2000s, you know, so 28, but you know, I wouldn't get hung up on the thousands. So yeah, 28, 29 would be just fine. And I see in the feed he said that he's going to be running 100 to 150 shot, so a 26,000 will be just fine for that, as long as you don't go anything beyond that. Um, but you know, I typically do 28 to 30,000s. Gap is not going to hurt you, you know,
It's just gonna
especially
have a
with
little bit more blow by. You might lose a horsepower, right?
yeah,
But when the rings don't butt up against each other and your motor is safe,
that's right.
that's a big plus, right?
Yeah,
If you've
and on
ever
my road,
well, but remember when the guys would get the LSs like right out of the junkyard? When
yeah,
did that start? Probably like 2007, and they were a lot of them. You used to see pictures on the internet where it'd have the entire top of the piston removed,
gone.
and you're like, I wonder how they did that. And then it started becoming a common rash, and
Yeah,
you're like, you know what? These guys are spraying them, and they're not opening up the ring gap. And what happens is that ring's going to go somewhere, and that
that's right.
hyperprotected piston is so much easier to move than the cast iron cylinder, right? So they just freaking pop the head of the piston right off, so they have some place to expand.
That's right. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and also too, if you run too much boost, you know that'll do the same thing.
Right.
Just
Yeah,
pop
it
right off.
works the same way.
Yeah.
But what I like, okay, so your second ring gap, the best thing to do is follow the manufacturer's advice for the rings that you're using in the application that you're using them, right? Because usually
Mhm.
they'll come with like a little pamphlet and it'll tell you, hey, if you're using nitromethane, gap them at this. If you're using alcohol, gap them at this. If you're using nitrous oxide, gap them at this. If it's NA and it's over 400 horse, gap at this. And if it's NA and it's less than 400 horse, you pretty much just throw them in there and you don't even worry about gap,
Yeah,
right?
and they'll tell you, you know, X amount per every inch is what
Exactly.
how they do
Yep.
it. Yeah.
Um, but we used to tighten up the second ring, and that's because the top ring is the one that catches all the heat, right?
Yeah.
That's the one that gets all the beating, and it expands the most. But it depends what your ring is made of, right? Because if
That's
you
the
have a
key.
top
Yeah.
ring, they had what was those steel rings that came in the Ford small blocks?
Yeah. Steel, and they had
Ductile
cast
iron.
iron.
Well,
Yeah.
they had ductile. Nah, I don't remember what it was. You used to be able to take the ring and just like freaking. Oh, sorry about that, but just like twist it into a pretzel and it wouldn't break, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I can't remember what those dang things were called, but
Well, they had
they.
ductile iron, they had cast iron, and then they had the moly, and then the moly steel.
Oh, okay. Well, it might have been. It might have been just ductile iron rings, but you used to be able to twist them into a pretzel and they wouldn't break. Those things didn't expand as much as what you'd
Hmm.
found. But if you had a
Hmm.
cast iron ring in that sucker, look out because it's coming like a freight train expanding, right? I mean, it's literally growing by inches. Um,
If you
and
watch it, you know.
right, and Molly rings, they kind of have the same issue as a cast iron ring because it's technically a cast iron ring with a molybdenum that's uh,
Coated.
flame sprayed on there, right?
Yeah.
They plasma. That's what. If you ever look at plasma moly rings, it's plasma atomized molybdenum that's sprayed on the ring, and it's technically just a cast iron ring.
Yeah.
But you can get some ductile irons, I think, that have moly on them. But
Also, to another one that plays into account is the thickness of the ring too.
oh
You
yeah, yeah. The
know.
and that was yeah, that's a big one.
Hmm.
The more surface area the ring has, the more it expands, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But man, it was tough learning back in the late 90s, early 2000s when because the small block Fords, they went to the thinner rings in probably what, 87, 88. So when everybody's pulling them out of the junkyard, it might be completely different than the first motor you had, and it would have problems with button rings. And the Fords weren't so bad about breaking pistons because a lot of them, if you got a hot motor, it came with forged pistons, right?
Yeah.
And what it'll do is they'll scorp the cylinder wall really bad, and then they'll smoke like mad. And you couldn't figure out what it was caused by. But you take it
Right.
apart and you'd see, oh wow, right where the ring gap is at on the block, there'd be freaking score marks, right? And you're
Yeah.
like, how is that possible? I've never seen that before. Well, it's because you're butting the ring when you're whacking it with a bunch of nitrous. All right, so let me see if I can catch up here. Do we have any other questions? Let's see. James says we got tops at 30, 32-second gap on Rusty Nova 4040 bore. But how much are you guys hitting it with though?
Yeah, see, that's probably like a 200, 250 kit. That's how I would do it for anything that's over 200 shot.
Yeah, when I do this turbocharged 350 Buick, I'm probably going to have about 26 to 28 on the top and maybe, I don't know, 28 on the bottom. I'm going to kind of err on the side of caution, but I don't think I'm really going to feed it too much boost. I'd like to keep it kind of relative. It's a stock motor, right? So, the neat thing is, I figured out I'm going to put that 69 350 Buick camshaft in that sucker instead of the Smogger cam. So that way it's going to have a little bit more lift and a little bit more duration. John, yeah, I think that's going to make a little bit more power. Who knows? Jonathan Chi has thrown another one at us. Shane, do you have experience with the Quadrajets put into the Dodge trucks? I have a 750 CFM. We're putting on our 360 build.
Nothing. In fact, that's the one thing Quadrajets, man, I was never into them. I honestly never worked with them. As soon as I saw one, I took it off and it went a Holly or a metal rock, depending on what you were doing.
There's a lot of people did that.
Yeah, and it just was. I never messed with them. I never had parts for them. It's just the very first car that I tuned was an Edelbrock, so I had parts for that. Then the next couple ones after that were some Holly, so I had parts for that. So then when the Quadrajets came around, I was just kind of like, I don't have anything for this, so let's change it to something I have it, I have parts for. So that's how it became, and I just never knew anything about them. So honestly, I know nothing about them.
And I'll get to it in a second. Like mine was the opposite because I was always the poor racer. So it was like, Quadrajet's cheap. You just go to the junkyard and there's one there, and you go to the next car and you take all the parts off of it, and then you go to the next car, and then next thing you know, you're walking out of the junkyard. You've paid $25. You got an entire track kit and a good carburetor, and that was the way to roll. And it used to like glean all the part hangers, accelerator pumps, metering rods, secondary metering rods. You'd take them all, and that way you'd have a track kit. But the thing I do know is, all right, so those are just like the Chevrolet trucks.
Mention a 350, same thing,
right? Well, the truck ones, it depends what year you have, but I want to say like anything later than 75, they came out with like an 80 thousandths air bleed on them, and they had these instead of having just your regular Quadrajet style boosters that you see in there. They got like a little nipple on each one, okay? And it's because it's a truck carb. The whole idea is for it to make good low-end torque. And fuel economy was secondary. You had to be able to do the job and run well for a long time. Because think about it. I mean, that's the thing that people kind of forget about trucks is a majority of them are used like, say, if you're working in an oil field in North Dakota, okay? And that truck, what you're going to do is you're going to go from pump to pump to pump to pump. So you drive out there in your truck. It's 20 degrees. It's sitting there idling for God knows how long, 2-3 hours. As you go check all these pumps, and then you come back to a warm truck, and it's been idling the whole time. And the whole idea was if you were to turn it off, it would start right back up. It was meant to run. It wasn't meant to fuel economy. It was a truck.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
so, but those, the truck ones are a little bit weird because they have the old style carburetor still, or you could get the newer version Smog ones that came on cars, but they both had those weird 80 thousandths air bleed nipple ends on them. I try not to use the truck ones just because the truck ones are very difficult to tune and they're hard to find parts for. The other thing is, when I said that Quadrajets come with multiple size metering rods and you have these weird ones later that had 31 thousandths ends on them instead of 26 thousandths like everything else, that was the trucks. And they were called the M rod. And if you look at the metering rods on the side, all the numbers are always stamped about 3/4 of the way down. And they're normally stacked. So it'll say like a 3-1 M, which would say it's 31 thousandths. But generally, it's just the power end is 31 thousandths. But you might have like 55 M, right? So that's 55 thousandths at your cruise, and on the very tip is 31 thousandths. Those things are kind of hard to tune. The good thing about Quadrajets is like any Quadrajet will fit on a Quadrajet style spread bore intake manifold. And my personal favorite ones are like 77 to 80. It doesn't matter if it's a Chevrolet or Pontiac, a Buick, whatever, as long as the fuel outlet's on the right side, the correct side for your application. Those things are extremely tunable. They actually have 4 circuits on them. So it makes them really tunable. But I'm not telling you to change your Quadrajet. I'm just saying that that's the experience I have with the truck.
It's funny. We actually make a good team because I know nothing about Quadrajets.
Dude, maybe we should just do like one day we'll just do a video and I'll bring a Quadrajet over and you can get an Edelbrock and we'll just freaking play with them and have fun. And here we'll mess it up and then I'll help you tune it so you can see how it works. Yeah.
You know what I should do is put one of those damn things on my Slant 6 and see if I can tune it. That's the way to do it, you know?
For sure. You know what? I got enough parts, dude. If you wanted to drive the Slant 6 car over here one day, we could build a carburetor just for it. And then you could go through air bleeds and metering rods. I have all the stuff. So knowledge is power, man.
Yeah, right.
Doug Narden says his mother-in-law works at Hastings Pistons Rings. She packs your rings. One of the reasons my icon is the Hastings Tough Guy. Well, that's kind of cool. Yeah,
I've always noticed that. I was always wondering why it was the Hastings guy.
Well, I tell you what, I've used Hastings in a lot of stuff, and my old man used to swear by them, right? Like you put Hastings rings in them, and they're going to seal up. They're going to seal. Even if you do an improper break-in, they're going to seal, right? And I've always had good luck with them things. Yeah. The one thing I did notice, though, Buick 455, they stopped making the plasma rings. Why? Those were freaking awesome. I used them in everything. Tony said they wouldn't work because my bore hone was too rough, which I don't believe because I did a lot of small block Fords and I had the finest stone you can get on a 3-stone hone. Let's see. Danny Boyd. I've got a set of 88 HO 50 or 50 HO pistons and rods. Probably the forged pistons. Yep, in 88 they were. Forged TRW pistons. They're heavy. But man, do they love nitrous.
I love that. It's funny.
What's that?
I think that's funny. I love nitrous.
The James and James it says 273,000 nitrous jets with a trash can solenoid crossbar plate, roughly 275 to 300. So they're whacking that Nova with a lot.
Yeah, that I figured they were. When I saw the gap on it, I knew it was like 250 and above. So yeah, I could just tell. But yeah, that's awesome.
His machine saying that a lot of the new top rings are steel, not cast or ductile iron. They have a reduced D-wall dimension and can be moly. I swear, maybe that's what those rings were in that Ford, because I remember taking them out of like a 2001 Explorer, and you know how like the Fords, when the guides get wore out, they cake the rings in there with oil.
Yes.
Right? Burnt oil, and then you can't get them out. And I was peeling at this ring, and I finally caught the corner of it, and I'm just like pulling on it, and it was just bending to like the weirdest, oddest shape, but not coming out of the piston, right? And I finally got it out, and it was all mangled. And I'm like, how did that ring not break? I have no clue.
Funny. While he's talking about this, I was looking up the ones that I bought for my Slant 6. And the ones I bought for my Slant 6 were basically it's a steel ring with a stainless steel expander. That's the top ring, the first ring. The second one is a gray iron phosphate. And
rings are the phosphate rings. That's the ones that stopped making that at Hastings for the big block Buick.
Yeah, so that's what it is. It's a phosphate, gray iron phosphate. So that's what I.
They are funky looking. When you take them out of the package, you're like, "What in the world?"
Yeah, they look different. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, James is saying if your gap is loose, you might notice. If they're too tight, everyone will notice, and 100%. That's where you'll be sweeping your stuff up with a dustpan and a foxtail after it breaks all the pistons, the ring lands off. So,
That's funny.
Andy's in here. Andy from UD Motorsports Garage.
Oh, what's going on, Andy?
So James is saying the biggest thing with nitrous is making sure your cylinder bore is true and keeping it sealed up good. If you get oil in the chamber, you're in trouble. Oh, does it? Oh, because it causes it to detonate?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if you get blow by on them too much, and that's why a lot of people run those evacs on them. You got to run something on them because you get any oil in there, it'll detonate. So yeah,
I did not know that. Let's see. Andy's saying that's so true. James and James asked me how I know. I can only imagine that Andy has a basket full of parts that no longer are internal parts.
I've ran over my crank a few times. I'm telling you, you learn that way.
Yeah. Well, nitrous, I've never really. I broke a block on nitrous, but I never did anything like mega damaging on the motor. It was always drivetrain parts that I was tearing up. I broke the pin. I had a track lock in the 8.8. I was using a stock rear end with stock gears and stuff, and it broke that pin in the track lock, and it fell down and locked in the housing. Or I don't know how many AODs I ate up till I finally just went to a C4.
I never really had any transmission or rear end problems. Drivetrain. The only thing I ever did is I on my 904 I stripped off all the gears on the input shaft in the converter one time, but other than that, never really had any issues. I've always had problems when I was trying to like put nitrous to it or whatever. Like you need power adders because there was no books on anything, so it was like,
right. Yeah. No, I didn't shaft. I didn't twist the teeth off of it, but I twisted it so much that when I took the training, I couldn't get the converter off the input shaft.
Oh yeah. My teeth came
all right. That's hard to get off of there. So I just took it to. I think I took it to TCI, to be honest with you, in like 2002. But,
mine was at Match Race. I was racing that import. It was the first round. I came off. There's a classic picture of me in the air, and he's on the line, and even his buddy's looking at me. And as soon as I hit second gear, all the teeth stripped right off, and the dude went by me. It was the first match race lost. I lost.
Oh, dude. And you know what? The only times you ever lost was because of breakage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
2. You and no, actually 3. The first time was Trey Sommers, my very first one, and I had a trans brake button that was it was a momentary button for let you get it like Napa. And I was like, yeah, I got my trans brake button, dude. He took me to school. I had no idea what I was doing, right? With that
I know the feeling. Yeah, like taking me to school. I went to college education on that match race. I was trying to foot brake a pro tree, and it's like, yeah, right, get out of town. You can't do it. I tried everything I could, and it still is not possible.
Yeah.
So Backwoods Custom Crap says, what's your opinion on an assault intake? Are they junk?
I've never even heard of them.
Me neither. I was hoping that you had.
No.
I've never heard of that. Is that the brand? I'm assuming that's the brand.
It's gotta be a Chinese knockoff or something. Salt intake. It looks like it's salt intake. It looks just like a knockoff of something.
Oh, it's Chinese then?
It's gotta be. It's it doesn't say. It just says Assault Racing. I mean, I've never heard of them personally, so I have no opinion on it.
I don't have any opinion on it either because I'd never even heard of it till you asked. But if it is a Chinesium intake, there's only one thing that's generally in common with Chinesium, and that's the machine work is usually horridly wrong. I mean, like bolt holes off by 1/8 of an inch and runners off by a bunch. That's something that seems to be consistent across the line, no matter what you buy. Okay, and it doesn't. And I understand guys like, hey, I can't afford it. I'm just going to go get this cheap Chinesium. I get it. Don't waste your time. Save your cash and get something, or buy a used quality American product.
Yeah,
you won't have those problems.
Even the pictures I'm looking at. I went to small block Chevy dual plane, and then they have like an upside down shot to where you can see the intake ports. And you think that they would get a better one, but man, that thing looks terrible. I don't know.
I remember the first thing I saw that was like that. I was crewing for a guy who had front engine dragster down in Australia, and he's like, "Hey, mate, I got some roller rockers." I'm like, "Really? Sweet." So we grab them out of the package, and he's like, "Yeah, they're like $200." I'm like, "200 Australian?" And which would have been like $100 US for a set of roller rockers. He's about to put on this freaking $10,000 rail motor, right? And I'm looking at him like, man, that's cheap. Where the hell did you get those? Oh, I got them off, I can't remember, like eBay or something. And the machine work was not finished. It was horrible looking out. I'm like, dude, you can run them if you want, but I'm off the crew. I'm not building another motor. This is stupid.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, it's not worth it for $100 set of roller rockers. Now, I
Yeah.
could see if you were like, hey, I got this Junkyard 350 and we're going to put it on a dyno and see how many RPM we pull until one of these breaks. I'm in, right?
Sounds great. Yeah, yeah. But you've got a lot of time and money, and so do I, into this thing, and you're going to put $200. The Jesus part, you're going to put $200 into it? Nah.
Right. Let's cut corners in a different area.
Yeah.
Jonathan Couchy says with the Dodge truck Quadrajet, they use the electric choke carbs replaced with a manual choke. Oh, I did not know that. I know that they're like the Chevy truck carbs. We had one on a 4x4 that we sold, got low 20s going 65 and a 360. That's not bad.
No.
And that's the thing is, like, that's the gain that today's world will never understand. Okay, like the newer generations will never understand the carburetor. Oh, that's so old school, old hat, right? That's a 20 mile per gallon on a 360 Dodge in a 4x4 truck. Okay, they don't even get that today. If you went and bought a 4x4 Dodge right now, and you got, let's say you got it don't even have to be a 6.4 Hemi, it can be a 5.7 Hemi. It's barely going to get 20 miles a gallon. Right?
I don't think it'll do that. My diesel truck barely gets 22.
This fuel economy is something that the carburetor is good at. The downside is the emissions at startup. That's it. That's all.
Right. And not only that, but just to know how to take care of it if there's a problem.
It is a maintenance complexity compared to EFI. Because think about your neighbor across the street, the dude that builds computers on the weekend, has a mower and it's usually broken because he doesn't know how to drain the ethanol fuel out at the end of the summer. That guy trying to work on a carburetor, right? Mm-hmm. That's why the world is so screwed up today. That dude, that's what EFI was designed for, was that guy.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Bicycle guy 111 here. Uh-oh. Am I froze up? Okay, 111 says, sorry guys, I should have provided some context for my question about modifying idle restriction air bleeds. I was asking in regards to running a dual quad setup on a mild engine. Thanks.
It still would be fine. It'd still be fine because those things, you can literally shut the fuel off on them on an idle block. The way that the idle circuit works is that thing will shut the fuel off. The fuel goes past that thing. So I don't think it's necessary. Honestly, it's going to be sensitive. Don't get me wrong, but it'll be just fine.
Let's see. Well, Danny Boyd's saying, yeah, some GM V8s have their fuel pumps on the wrong side. I don't know what is it. He must be referring to in comparison to the Chrysler. What side is it on the Chrysler?
Same side. Same side
as what?
As a GM. It's on the passenger side.
Oh, as a Chevrolet then. Okay, because the Buicks are on the driver's side.
Oh, that could be why. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's why they have some of I think the Pontiacs do as well. But then that's why you have the Quadrajet with the straight outlet, and then you have the one with the 90-degree outlet. And it all depended upon where the fuel pump was at, is which carburetor you used, so that the line would line up.
That's good.
Oh, okay. So Ed's saying that those steel rings they bend but don't break. Let's see. Danny Boy, I want to build me a 302 for my truck and use them. I've got some iron 3-bar GT40 heads too. Just need a block and a crank.
Yeah.
Man, you should be able to source one of them in the junkyard easy still.
Yeah, they're a dime a dozen. In fact, I was just down at the wrecking yard just the other day, and they're a dime a dozen. You can get them out of a truck all the time.
Oh, okay. So James is saying the oil kills the octane in the fuel, which makes them detonate easily.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I did not know that. Because oil would have cetane in it. I don't know. It isn't like, it would be like diesel oil. But one step away from it. Okay. Hopefully, before too long, a buddy of mine will be working out a deal with me for Slant 6 with 3 on the tree training for extra Mopar stuff. Mopar Man 1978. Let's see.
I talked to him on the phone a few weeks ago about getting his engine set up. So, yeah, good guy.
Well, he's also saying, I put a Professional Products China air gap intake on my 318. It's for LA Magnum. It's on my 82 Dodge D150. No issues so far.
Professional products are pretty good. I mean, they're actually pretty decent.
Yeah, like I said, the only thing I've noticed is that the machine work is generally short, right?
Yeah, the fit and finish, yes.
James is saying we got Chinese rockers on Rusty. They're great so far, but many all break next pass, or may all break next pass. Who knows? I've heard good stuff. I've heard bad stuff out of them. I'm just going by what I have seen. The thing that to me that's the most consistent is just the machine work.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, Doug Narden's, he said, I would click my heels together like an Irishman if my 07 Hemi ran 4x4 got 20 miles per gallon.
It doesn't. Yeah. Not even close.
Yeah. And that's what's funny is like, you know, when I was building the Suburban with the big block Buick, everyone was like 8-10 miles a gallon. That's all you're going to get. And then with the 455 went out there and got 15.4, 15.7 something. And I'm like, oh, wow, there's something to this. And then if you go look at a 3/4 ton, like they don't make a 3/4 ton Suburban anymore. But if you go look at it like a 3/4 ton truck, just 2-wheel drive, they're getting about the same mileage. And I got a turbo 400 with no overdrive and a carburetor and an HEI distributor. There's really no gain in fuel economy over the past 20 years, right? I don't know why that is. You would think with all the Wampadine stuff that we got that we would be able to have a little bit better fuel economy. But I'm wondering if, since there is no gain on fuel economy, why have that newer truck?
Yeah, bells and whistles. You know, the one thing that I've been working, you know, that I've been at Edelbrock, and I see a lot of the dyno running constantly, is that it takes X amount of fuel to make X amount of power, and most vehicles need 50 horsepower to 30 to 50 horsepower to go down the road, depending on your speed, as far as coefficient of drag and, you know, cross-sectional area, so on and so forth. But regardless, you're going to need in a V8 engine, you're going to need X amount of fuel to make that amount of power, regardless if it's carbureted or fuel injected. Now, the fuel injection is going to atomize a little better, so it's going to vaporize a little faster, so on and so forth. But if you're at a point where you're only making 30 to 40 horsepower to go 65 miles an hour, it doesn't matter if it's carbureted or fuel injected, it's going to get the same mileage. That's just takes so much fuel in an engine to make that much power. So
Mexican Spec saying I once got 14 in my 72 Ford LTD Bro-Am 400 2-barrel, and I was happy. Yeah, I can see that. The 400 was like probably, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, the most detuned Cleveland that there was, right? The pistons were in the hole by like 125 thousandths. Now, if you fixed all that stuff, that's what made them Clevelands run so good was compression, right? So, but I don't know. Those, I'm assuming there was a lot of those that died due to pre-ignition. You know, like detonation was so bad in those engines that I remember seeing them in the junkyard well before anything else of the era. But Ed's machine, we have a 2020 Ram Laramie 1500 Hemi 5.7, it will get 21 plus on the highway. And that's what Dizzy Easy was saying in his truck. He was, 23.3, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a 4x4 is a little bit different generally. Generally, they're 1
Right.
miles a gallon. And that has changed over the years because the old four-wheel drive trucks used to be full-time four-wheel drive, essentially. And then now they have them to where they don't lock in based off vacuum, or they'll only run 3 axles, or a lot of the parasitic loss is gone.
Yeah,
right?
my diesel still has, even though it's locked out, the front end still is constantly spinning.
Oh,
it does not unlock at the hub. So
you get a whole bunch of
parasitic
unspun
loss.
weight.
Yeah, it's got a locker in the front, but even then, if it's unlocked and it's going down the road, it's dragging that front end.
And Mexican Spec is saying that keep in mind the Dallas trucks are heavier these days with all the extra crap they have now.
Yeah,
I would agree. And if you haven't noticed, they're much bigger, right? If you take a half ton from, let's say, this year, and you put it next to a half ton from 20 years ago, well, GM square body truck. Let's say a GM square body truck. That thing almost looks like a mini truck compared to the new one.
Yeah.
And I think, that's what you're looking at is the weight and the surface area of the vehicle is so much more that I'm assuming that maybe the drag might be worse. I don't know. I do remember cars from the 40s and 50s getting 20 plus miles to the gallon, and it was kind of amazing that it didn't really improve over the whole entire course. Is that because they want you buying the same amount of fuel?
I don't know.
No. It's just,
remember, it only takes X amount of power. It takes X amount of power to go X amount of speed. You gotta burn so much fuel to make that power.
Yeah, and I've seen some cars get 30 plus. Like my T-Bird. My T-Bird used to be phenomenal on fuel. It would sometimes get over 30. Most of the time it was around 27, 28. And that was a 5-liter Ford with an AOD and a 345 gear. And it would do pretty good going down the road. Now you hammered on it, it could get 4, 5, 6, 8, something, but if you're just cruising down the road, that thing was amazing on fuel.
Yeah. What's he saying here?
Mopars, Mustang, and minivans.
No, that's Damien. Yeah.
What's that?
That's Damien. Him and his mom came to my house. I gave him that 360.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, I'll be buying some from my 360 Magnum that Shane gave me. I'll be messing with Professor P.
He was asking about that. How does the machine work on the Edelbrock performance heads? They're good. Really, it is good. I've seen a lot of that work because obviously I work for them, and I see how they're it's all done obviously in Olive Branch now, so it's really good.
They still do all the machining in the U.S. and the casting.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, it's done. Casting's done in
Torrance.
No, it's Cerritos. Yeah,
it's still the Edelbrock foundry though.
Yeah, it's right there by Hemet. You remember between Hemet and
Riverside County.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then it comes over to us in Olive Branch, and we do all the machine work.
And see, Danny Boyd says the 351 modified couldn't have been any better. They cracked a lot of those Cleveland 2V heads. You know what? That unfortunately, in my lifetime of Cleveland that is the engine if you want performance out of a small block. But man, did it come out at the wrong time in the world. It was like the first year was like 70 years. Then the next year would have been like 71, where they had to drop the compression to 8-1, and man, that's too bad. The Aussies got lucky on that one because they still had high octane fuel and they didn't have all the emissions crap, EPA stuff, and they ran good for a few more years. Let's see. The castings and hardware are great usually. Is he talking about the Edelbrock, you think?
Yeah, I guess. I was trying to read above it, but I don't know what he was talking about.
Oh. Well, and James is out of here. So, hey, see you later, Big James.
Yep. See you later, bud.
Dave Norman. Have you guys seen the Rotec TBI fuel systems made in Australia, not quite a carb. No.
I'm gonna check it out right now.
Yeah, Mexican specs saying trucks are monsters now. Yeah, they're pretty dang big. I never really realized it until I had my OBS Ford and I was driving along and I'm looking at the middle of a door of a 4x4 half-ton truck. And it's like, it's not lifted, it's just the factory, the way they are. They're big.
Oh, they look weird. Oh, the Rotec it looks like it's an aerospace industry. They're talking about like Rotec engines and Lycoms. So those are like for like your, your small, like, single engine type things.
Huh. So it's a TBI fuel injection system?
Yeah, but it looks like, now maybe I'm on the wrong site, but it looks like it's talking about like the Rotac, like 912, or the Lycoms. The Lycoms are basically the ones from like your Cessnas.
Cessna, yeah. I was gonna say aircraft engines.
Mm-hmm.
The one that always got me that you probably don't see too much these days, but in like the early 90s, Ford made a variable Venturi carburetor.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that it was like I guess a street version of the Predator carburetor.
Oh, okay.
And God, were they hard to mess with, but wow, did they really seem to be with the 2-barrel even was like they were really, really freaking peppy for what they were. And that's because, back then in the 80s, it would be the early to mid 80s, right before they went to fuel injection, they had that variable Venturi carburetor. And then I think they went 1 year, had like TBI, and then the next year was sequential. But the those variable Venturi carburetors were really, really peppy because the velocity was always so high in them.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd make even the most anemic 302 Ford feel peppy. That's the one thing I remember about them. But man, when you see one, you've seen one because they're weird looking. They have 2 square slots in the top where it would be your barrels, and then the whole entire thing has a slide like a Mikuni carburetor, right? And that's your throttle blades. For I guess a lesser term, Let's see. Oh, well, see, Danny Boyd saying here, early Falcons could get 30 miles per gallon.
Wow. Well, that depends on what speed, though, because, a lot of the Slant 6s, people claim 30 miles per gallon, but at what speed? 45 to 60? Sure, I can see that, but once you get over that 60 miles an hour and the coefficient of drag goes up, that's hard to believe,
Well, Mexican Spec brings up a valid point here. I have no cars anymore with working odometers to check my mileage, so I have no idea what my Slant 6 is doing.
Perfect.
Hey, you know what? And that way you don't have to worry about it. You just tell everybody it's 25. Actually, you can make some ridiculous number, and then they'll check it for you, and then you're like, what? This math doesn't even come out.
Yeah.
Let's see here. The 1500 Chevy is now heavier and can legally tow more than older trucks. New 3500 compares to medium duty trucks from the 80s.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah,
I do believe it too. Because you remember, it probably wasn't even 10 years ago when the Titan came out. They had a commercial where they were towing the space shuttle, right?
It's true. Yeah, they towed the space shuttle from what is it?
It was Nissan
LA?
Titan, right? Wasn't it Nissan Titan or was it Toyota Tundra? It was one of the two.
One of the two. Who knows?
But I know that if you would have done that with like a half-ton or 3/4-ton truck from, like, say, the 80s, it would have spit the ring gear right out of the back of the pumpkin, right? I mean, there's no – well, I don't know. I can't say there's no way it wouldn't have happened because there was some freaking awesome commercials in the 80s for trucks. If you haven't watched them –
you watch them.
Chevy versus Ford versus Mopar was the best.
The Dodge one was one of the best. They actually had a Ford truck in the bed sitting sideways, and they had the Chevy being towed.
Flat towed, right?
Yeah, flat towed, just with just a rope, and it was going up this pile of rocks. It was beautiful.
Well, that was because I want to say the Chevrolet commercial had the Ford in the bed and went up the pile of rocks, and then Mopar was like, well, F it. We're going to top all of you guys, and we're going to lump all your crap on at one time and pull it up there.
That's what they did. Yeah.
Yeah, those were some awesome commercials in the 80s.
Someone was talking. I'm going to back up here a little bit, but someone was just mentioning about the putting a piece of wire in the idle jet. Yeah, that's in the booster that you can screw into. And I honestly didn't know this. This is something new for me. I was actually just kind of researching it. They actually tell you in the if you actually read the instructions, sometimes they're saying about a 30 gauge stainless steel wire. You can put it in the jet, and it would actually cut down on the surface area. And it tells you the AGW of the gauge. It tells you the diameter, and then it tells you the area. So how much it'll actually reduce it. So yeah, that's a good tip. I've never had a problem with the jet on anything that was an Edelbrock. I literally would just screw it in or screw it down, and it would be just fine. Because how the circuit works is it runs off the main circuit is how the fuel comes in. It comes down through the main circuit, which is going right past the metering rod. Then it goes back basically up. Then it goes to the bypass, which is the air bleed, which is in the actual the venturi that bolts into an Edelbrock. Then it goes through like a second idle air bleed. Then it goes through the idle jet. Then it goes down through the transfer slot, which is right next to where the idle mixture screw is. So I've never, the Edelbrocks are really set up so well. I've never had to change them much. You basically just, they come out, with about a turn and a half, and they're usually set up. So anyways, sorry to back up.
No, that's all right. Moperman 1970S has talked to a guy a few years back in the auto business globally. He said you could take a 97 Dodge truck. It would get okay mileage here, but if they ship the same vehicle to Europe, it gets better gas mileage. That's because of the ethanol and the fuel. When I was in Australia, I think the lowest octane rating on the pump was like 101, right? Something like that. And then they may rate them different. I have no idea. But I know you had to go out of your way to buy fuel with ethanol in it. You had to literally look for it. And the fuel economy would plummet on anything that wasn't designed for it.
Yeah.
So Danny Boys, they quit making real trucks after 1980. So
Except Dodge. You gotta finish it. There you go. Except Dodge. What's funny about that? when they changed the diesel, they put that low sulfur. I did notice that my diesel truck ran a little different. And there was a while there where I actually was going down. I was getting fuel from Mexico, like Tijuana fuel, diesel, and my truck was actually running better. When I first got it, it got crappy mileage. In fact, I was bummed out because the window sticker said 20 plus miles per gallon on the road. I think barely got 13 or 14, but it wasn't broken in. And it actually didn't start getting the miles till it got to 60,000. And then it started getting really good mileage. And then they took all that sulfur out of it. And then it dropped way down. I remember the best I got out of it was 24 or 25 miles to the gallon, going to my brother's house in LA. And then it went all the way down. It lost 4 miles per gallon when they took the sulfur out of it.
Oh, really? I know the biodiesel does that. It actually drops down with the biodiesel, but I didn't know about the low sulfur diesel.
Yeah.
You remember when I first moved out there to California, when we probably first met, I got lucky because I had 2 diesel vehicles. I was like, oh man, my wife had this Volkswagen Passat diesel, and I had that Ram Eco Diesel, and we moved out there and it was gasoline $4.50 a gallon, diesel fuel $1.25, and I'm like, yeah, I'm freaking finally winning, right?
Yep.
And all of a sudden it's the diesel emissions scandal hits the freaking newspapers, or the news, or whatever you want to call it now.
Yeah.
So then the Volkswagen, California won't even let me renew the plates on it. And here it's a car that I'm having to make payments on still, and I can't drive it. And I'm this, luckily I still own that house in Florida. So I got on a plane and flew to Florida and renewed my license plates at my home address there for the house. Yeah. And then took the plates back and put them on the freaking car in California. F these guys. I can't eat this car in California, because I try to replace that car that I bought for, let's say I spent $20,000 on it in Florida. It was probably $28,000 in California. But so that variable Venturi carburetor, I guess it was late 70s. So it looks like there's a few people that had them. Mexican Spec had them, and Buck Del Campo, whose buff is just made it here, I guess. But had a variable Venturi on a Fairmont. So yeah, oh well, there you go. Mexican Spec saying Mexico never had the variable Venturi carb though. Lucky you.
Right.
Yeah, I remember a lot of guys taking those off and throwing them in the trash. Let's see. Dave Norman says, go to YouTube and have a look at Rotec TBI on a straight 6. That's kind of cool.
Huh.
What I always wanted to do was like the overseas, a lot of the taxis and stuff used what they called LP, liquid propane, right?
Yeah.
And I always wanted to try one of those out on something. Not propane injection like on a diesel, but I mean like run it.
Yeah, no. There was a guy in Ramona when I was growing up, and he had propane on it. Now the engine didn't make nearly the power that it did on gasoline, but it was just cheap. It just ran, and you never had to change the oil. Never got dirty. You know?
Oh, I can believe that. Yeah, because it runs clean, right? But I always heard the opposite. I heard they ran better on propane because the octane is so high. It's like 110 octane or something.
It just never did have the power. We were racing motocross at the time, and he was towing a trailer. And when you switch over to propane, because you have this big hat thing that he would switch over to, and he would use the propane to go to the track, but then use the gasoline to come back up the hill, because that was down when we go down to Carlsbad. So he was coming down the hill, and he said that the propane just didn't have the power to get back up the grade.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I know they run lean.
Could be.
It's hard to put the ideal air fuel ratio to a propane vehicle when it's limited on like line size and stuff like that, because it's compressed gas. I don't believe there's any pump. It's just running off the compressed gas in the tank, and it hits a certain peak where it can't push any more volume of fuel, right? Because it has no more pressure. So
right.
Yeah, Mexican Spec saying that if you try to smog a 78 Fairmont V8 car in California, you better have the variable Venturi carburetor. It won't pass. California smog was a bitch for a carbureted car. Man, early 90s, there was so many abandoned junk cars at the junkyard that were so nice because of that. Yeah. Because of, and Shane, I mean, you saw it. I saw it. No. I was like the dude that, I was the guy you brought it to on base to get it to pass, so you could get a freaking emissions. You could get a passing emissions. What is it? A pink slip, and then you take it and you get a base sticker. They wouldn't allow you to have base sticker in California unless you had a passing emissions. And I was the dude to take it to, because I was all about thinning that gas down with some methanol, right? And
the guaranteed to pass. We used to go down and I would get the alcohol, the isopropyl, alcohol, and pour it in there and get that sucker to pass. Yeah, I did the same thing. Yeah.
So, but it was like, oh, how'd you do that? Well, just come see me next year, because what you're doing is technically legal, right, in California. But I don't know. It didn't say you couldn't do that, but it didn't say you could. It's a gray area.
I didn't put anything extra onto the vehicle because that's what it's saying.
Right.
I just put something better into the tank.
Yeah, and all it did was thin the gas out. It ran lean as hell. So, and then the other thing was the timing number. The timing number had to be like the factory rated. If it said 8 degrees before top dead center, but it ran so much better at 12, it better be 8 or you ain't passing.
That's right. Yep, exactly. And that's the one thing I always checked is that, especially on the Hondas, because everybody would jack that thing way up, and it would go there and it would just fail. The first thing it would clip it on there and go down there and click on it, fail. So that's one thing I did is I always would just back the timing back down.
Yeah, and for some reason at idle, that seems to help. I don't know why. You would think it'd be the other way around, because it seems like it's way more efficient, because when you put a vacuum gauge on it, the vacuum gauge goes up, and generally when your vacuum's higher, it's more efficient. But for some reason, that ideal timing mark that they have from the factory has something to do with, idle fuel consumption or burn rate or something. I don't know.
I don't know.
You would think with a little bit more timing, they would burn more fuel because it would have
it's going to make more torque. Yeah.
Right. But let's see here. Let's catch up some.
I don't know where you're at. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
Okay. So here, this guy is a Pico 67 SS says toss a quart of two cycle oil in a full tank. Oh, he must be talking about something else.
Yeah, we used to do that with the rotary engines. We used to put 2 cycle oil in those.
In the fuel?
Yeah. Not to make it pass, but just to make them run good, so they didn't burn themselves up. You put some 2 cycle oil in the fuel to keep those things from melting down.
Yeah. The California one was the visual one, as well as like the sniffer test. So you had like they look under the hood, and everything had to be factory spec.
Yeah, even the air cleaner.
Yeah, I was going to say even the air cleaner was, because you remember in the 80s they had them goofy like flame arresters and all that stuff in the late 80s. Those air cleaners had to be on there, or you failed immediately.
Yeah.
And there was certain things that would happen, like let's say you took a 95 Chevy truck, which had a TBI 350 in it, and you put a 87 engine in it with the 95 heads and intake manifold, and it had something goofy like let's say a fuel pump boss or something, right? And it would fail the inspection, and they'd send you to this guy called the referee.
Yep, referee.
And the referee would then be your representation to the state EPA that if your vehicle was good enough for the road. And it was always, generally you didn't see that guy until you did a older engine and newer car. Is that what it was?
If it failed more than twice, you're at the referee.
Oh, is that what it was? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'd never dealt with that, but we did the engine swaps, and it was always like the older engine and the newer car would always immediately get you to the ref.
Yeah, because it had to pass some newer emissions. Whatever one was newer. So if it was a new engine, it had to pass that emissions.
Right. Yep. That's exactly what it was. The standard was for whatever the newest part was on it. So if you had like a 65 Chevy truck with a LT1 engine in it from 1996, it had to pass for 1996.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, is that
well,
that
actually,
was up until 95. Once 95 happened, then they stopped going back to 65, and then it was only 30 years back, right? And then once it got to 75, because even my Volkswagen, I had a 67 Bug, that technically had to be smogged when in the early 90s.
Yeah, I had to do
it. And then
66.
Was that?
I had to do it on a 66.
Yeah, but then my 66 only had a PCV valve, and that was it on mine. On my 66 was a PCV valve. So if that was on there, it was fine. But then after it got past that, then it was just like anything that was up to 75, and that's when the prices of those cars, just skyrocketed in California.
Right. Yeah, and people were hoarding them. Oh my God.
Yes.
And they would go for sale, like they'd be almost as much as a new car because it didn't have any emissions on it, right?
Yeah, that's right. No emissions. That was the thing. No smog in bold letter. No smog.
Well, remember it used to have like what was that? Was it the Auto Trader magazine that used to come out on Tuesdays? And that was like the big thing on it was like no smog. It would be in capital letter, no smog, right?
Bold. Yeah. That was funny. We used to love that. It would come out on Thursday morning.
Oh, is it Thursday? I used to wait by the newsstand for the guy to put them out.
Yeah, so it would be Thursday morning. We'd ride on our bikes, and we'd always get the Auto Trader for like the Volkswagens, and then I get the muscle car one, and then we get the Cycle Trader. So like whatever, because we were dirt bike guys, right, too. And there was a few times we bought cars out of that it was so much fun. That was so much fun, man, at the time.
Oh, I agree. I was there doing the same thing, just on the opposite end of San Diego, and I didn't even know you then. But so Danny Boyd says I could usually get the emission systems working and pass legitimately. I'll be honest with you, I couldn't, and that's because these sailors that bring these cars from, like, say, Idaho, they've never had emissions in their life.
Yeah, and not only that, but they've been sitting for so long. They would come back from a trip,
Yeah, deployment.
and the car had been sitting for a year or 6 months or whatever, and the fuel in it's crap. Nothing's been running, and they're like, "Hey, I got 3 days to get this thing running." You're like, "Dude, fuel is old. It's like it smells like turpentine," you know.
Oh. Well, Mexican spec says I learned how to get around all the smog laws in California. For every rule they have, there's a way around it. The one that I found seems to be the go-to that no one ever really looked at. And I would shop in the Auto Trader, or when it went to online, the ticket used to be look for a 3/4 ton or a 1 ton like Suburban, right?
Yeah, because they're considered cars.
And they had no emissions requirement because it was a 3/4 ton or 1 ton.
Yeah.
But I think that ended at about 95 or something. 90.
Yeah. Well, here's another one too. That I used to have property in, or I had an address in Julian, and so when you're in the mountain industry, or say you're in Ramona or Julian and Imperial County, it was one-time smog, and then that was that. They didn't bother you anymore because you're up in high elevation, so they had all the fuel. So my truck, I had a 440 in it when it came back from Georgia the first time. I went up there, got it smogged the one time, and that was that. And I just kept the thing rolling, but it was registered in Julian. But that's how I got around it.
Yeah, there was a lot of sailors figured out there was one ticket card, and you had to be so lucky to find one. But it was Mercedes-Benz made a thing called a 300 TD, right? 300 diesel. And it had no emissions at all. Zero. So you didn't even you just mailed in the registration. California just mail you your new ticket or your new sticker. Yeah. And people found that out, dude, and that's what they were all buying them. There must have been about 10 of them on the base. Let's see.
You're pretty far behind. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I am pretty far behind. I need to catch up. Let's see. John Wilburn saying, "Hey, I'm on the road, but I'm listening." Professor P had that 1 year only bug, 67.
It is. 67 is funkier because it was the first year and only year of the front fenders, and it was like a 69, but it also, because it didn't have the glass over it, it just was smooth, and then it had the I believe it was the last year of the horn grill that was in the fenders, and then the rear bumper had it was the dual bumpers, and it had the two reverse lights in it. It was the first year of the 12 volt. Oh man, I'm going to go down the rabbit hole. And then it was the only year of the third gear. No, first year of the third gear. It was a special third gear with a special reduction. It was the first year of the 1500. Now.
Oh, would it be a first year of the dual port as well?
I don't know that one. I don't know. I think it was still a single port. I don't know, but it was a 1500 where it had the dual relief in the case. So I think it was an AE case, I believe. And then what else did it have? It had a few other things too. Oh yes, it had a long axle, short spline, I believe, is what it was. And everything beyond that was as far as how the swing axle was. And now 68 still had a swing axle. It's kind of a half year thing, but my 67 was the wide 5 bolt on it. 5 on, the big wide 5.
The big wide 5s.
Yeah, the big wide 5. So there was a lot of like one only things on a 67. It was pretty cool, and it was black and almond, like where the chrome trim was on the door, and it was almond below that. And
dude, in the 90s, those things were still everywhere, and I mean everywhere.
Yeah,
I had never seen them on the road. Like growing up in Illinois, like I said, dude, then things came off the train. They freaking vaporized in the first year that they had salt on the road, right?
Vaporized. Yeah,
but yeah, I could only imagine what they looked like kind of like an Alka-Seltzer going down the road, right? But Mexican specs, I know a guy that had a newer engine in an older car, and they made him rip it out and find an 81 engine. It went from blowing zeros to almost failing.
Yeah, it's true. It's ridiculous.
There's a lot of horror stories like that where I remember the hot rod thing to do for the 5-liter Mustang guys for a while was hide the wiring, okay? And when you hide the wiring, you hide what they called the tib and the tab, which was your thermactor air inlet and bypass for your smog pump. Okay. Well, they used to be mounted like right on the firewall next to the passenger side fender. Well, when you hide all the wiring, they're gone. They're not gone. They're just hidden out of the way. But when you open the hood to do the visual inspection, bang, you automatically fail and you're going to the ref. And, the ref would be like, how the hell is this thing passing emissions? Well, all the emission stuff is under the fender. Like the Fords, they had the inner fender skirt with the fender on the outside. And so you could have all that room on the inside. So they just moved it all to the, the inside of that fender. And, the ref had to get involved, and then you moved that emissions equipment, and oh God, dude, it's like, get out of town.
It's terrible.
Yeah, so Dakota is digging on my my '63 Buick.
Nice.
Yeah. So, well, stay tuned. I got another video coming out tomorrow morning. I just got done editing it right before this. Mexican Spec saying the recycler was the paper to get on Thursday. Man, I could have swore it was Auto Trader.
It was Auto Trader. There was a recycler, but that came out later because Auto Trader. And when I say, before, we're talking like back in the 80s and 90s. That's when I was getting the Auto Trader.
Yeah. So the military was allowed to have plates from their home state, though. Why did they have to go through that? You could have plates from your home state, but you had to have a Smog to get the base sticker so you could drive on the base and park your car on the base. Otherwise, it sat out in front of the base. And if you sound like you're from San Diego area, if you drove down to 32nd Street, there used to be cars lined all the way down 32nd Street, and that's because they couldn't drive on the base. And that's because they couldn't pass Smog. So you were virtually getting screwed by California state government, even though you were non-resident military. It was the opposite of liberty and freedom. So, and it started there when I first saw it. Like, it hasn't gotten better, I'm sure. Let's see. My 77 F-150 was exempt, 6,050 pounds gross. The trucks, I didn't think they came on to like the 80s.
I don't know.
I know they have past emissions, but they didn't have really any emission stuff on them until like the 80s.
I think it was done by weight. I think he is right on that one in California because it was. I think it was.
You know what? They also did the commercial plates and all that stuff too, right?
Yeah, exactly. You just paid more.
Yeah, Mexican Spec is saying you would be fascinated with the Mexican Beetles. The small taillights were used. Was past the 67 model. Yeah,
because in 67 was the last year of the small taillights. So they went to a big taillight, the big round ones.
Yeah, Danny Boyd saying Michigan rust is probably as bad as that. It's the same thing, I'm sure of it. I mean, every time I think of a car, brand new car, you're driving it off the lot in like Illinois or Michigan or Indiana, the Rust Belt as they call it, I think of the part of the Green Mile where they forgot to wet the sponge, right? And that's how the car is going down the road. It's just like literally, smoking or on fire. Exactly. Because my dad had a, what did he have? Like a 63 Bel Air 4-door something. He was driving. It had to be like 78, 79.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only, at that time, like 12, 13, 14 years old. Dude, you could have thrown a dead cat through the quarter panels and it come out the other side, man. I mean, it was like there was holes.
Yeah.
Literally, there would get drifts through them, when the snow would come in.
I hadn't seen anything like that until I went on my very first business trip since I was with Plymouth Rock. We went up to like Chicago area.
Uh-huh.
Man, I've never seen so many rusty cars in my life, like for real. Like, and it was right before winter, so they were saying all the rusty cars are coming out because that's when they would bring them out, and every single panel was just rusted through. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, that's God. And you should have. Okay, so being a gearhead up there was rough, man. Can you go to the junkyard and it's like there might be like a 6-year-old car in there and it's just rusted to death, right? But you'd crawl up and, oh man, hey, I need to get this off of this car. You crawl up under there, or taking rear ends was the worst because you get under there and you get like a couple wrenches on it, and you couldn't get the bolts loose because they'd be rusted into place. And then your eyes would get filled with rust as it's falling off the car as you're shaking things and trying to get stuff loose. Oh, it's miserable. And then I went to the San Diego Junkyards and I'm like, oh my God, this is, Mecca. I'm running around with a burrito in this hand and a freaking cold drink I got at the concession or the Mexican taco shop, like right outside of the park or the truck, right in the parking lot. And I'm walking around looking at all this stuff that's done vaporized in my home state. And you could crawl up under it and take stuff off and things wouldn't fall in your eyes.
Wow.
There was no rust. They were freaking nice. But Caesar OSO, greetings, Dallas and Chain from Peru. Usually used to have an 88, 90, 95 octane. Oh, okay. So their octane level is even higher than ours.
He's saying that with the new rules are going to change it.
Yeah. But by the way, my consulting about Buick 3 pistons was for part number for this engine. Was that at the last video?
I think that was it. Yeah, because that part number looks familiar. It's like a 30 over piston is what that looks like.
Yeah, I don't know I don't remember what the question was. I'm sorry. It was a week or couple.
You know what? Send it to slantdailygarage at yahoo.com and I'll share it with Dallas. How about that? Slantdailygarage at yahoo.com. Send me the question and I'll share it with Dallas because he's definitely the BO guy.
Beck said, I got the recycler every Thursday from the early 80s all the way up. I don't remember what the Auto Trader, what day the Auto Trader came out. Those were expensive cars. and you know what? I think I remember that recycler because I think it came out on the same day, and I believe it was probably the same people that did the Auto Trader as the recycler. And so you had like $1,000 and less deal, which would be the recycler. Because I remember going to look at parts cars, and they were in their own separate magazine. You had cars that were drivable, and that was your Auto Trader. But then you had that one that was nothing but parts. Do you remember that?
That's a parts trader. No, the Auto Trader. Auto Trader had many different ones, and it cost $1 for each one. So you could just get them for free. So if you wanted like say the 75 or say 80 and older, they had one for that, and then the 80 and newer, then they would have the cycle trader, then they had the parts trader, then they had the import trader.
Oh, well, I remember. I get a stack of them suckers like on Thursday, right? And I just go through them, and I would
reading material for the whole week.
Well, my barracks room. And and I would freaking like, oh gosh, look, a 72 Cutlass, and you're like, man, these are long gone back at home. I should buy this and I should drive it home on Christmas leave and drop it off with my parents and see if I can get it for a couple of bucks, right? Like make a couple grand because those cars were freaking few and far between in Central Illinois.
Yeah.
So Danny Boyd saying there was no cats on the F-150s until 79.
Yeah, 77, 79 is about right.
John Wilburn says he's impressed with Professor P's VW knowledge. I'm a closet air-cooled VW fan.
Dude, you know what? My very first race car or street hot rod was a Volkswagen. It was that 67 Bug. It went from, it was a 1776 was the first one. Then I went to a 1915. That's a 69 crank with 94 pistons. And then I went to a 2332. I went straight from that to that. Then I realized that the 84 millimeter crank was just not the way to go when you're running a 94 piston. And I dropped it back down to a 92 piston. So that way I didn't have to cut into the shuffle pins. And I think it was I'm going to kill myself here. 2275, I think, is an 82 and a 92. I'm just going off of memory here from, umpteen years ago. But that was the engine to have, was the 2275. That was, in my opinion, something that had over 60 hours of runtime. A 2332 during that time, I used to go to Potter Machine, and they would weld in on the number 3 bearing in the back, where the number 3 cylinders at. That bearing right there would just pop out. So he would weld in reinforcement there, And then I would set up the case for full flow, and then there was a lot of other little gussets that were welded onto it. Remember, those things are magnesium, so welding on them was very sketchy. And
fire.
yeah, basically it was just appeared. Yeah, it started on fire. It's gone. That was my very first one, and then I got the very first CB Performance. It was a fuel injected turbocharged setup. I think it was like 95 or 94. But if you look it up, it's CB Performance. It actually had 3 dials on it. It had an idle, a mid, and a wide open. And then it didn't even have a wide band, it had a narrow band. And so you're going down the track and in wide open throttle, and you're first, second, and then by the time you hit third, you're trying to dial it and keep this thing on the green as you're trying to go down the track and then pull third gear, and then it was terrible. You were the computer essentially. It was an infinitely adjustable carburetor going down the road, but yeah.
Well, Meg says I went to Florida in '89 and saw old trucks with the bodies rusted halfway up. I had never seen anything like that. And here I am dogging on the Midwest, the Rust Belt area for the rust. But here's something that, like Shane will probably be very familiar with. Yeah, you get a pristine exterior body that lasts forever, but the interior's burned up. And in the Midwest, you could literally get a perfect interior out of a car. And I mean, that's how they were. They were well taken care of, and they didn't get beat up by the sun like that. It was a trade-off, but the sheet metal ended up winning because most of the stuff wasn't reproduced like it is today.
Yeah. And, actually Imperial Beach, some of the worst cars I've ever seen in my life came from Imperial Beach because of that salt spray that would come up onto the road there. And man, I just, because it would get onto the road right there. And I saw my very first rusted out vehicle from a car that never really left Imperial Beach. And I was just like, what is this?
Oh, dude, I'll tell you the worst. And it's irony at its finest. So when I first joined the Navy, I was working at an adult job at a factory making interiors for Dodges and Jeeps, right? Well, they shipped my entire line to Mexico. And I was left unemployed the next day. And I'm like, oh, crap, what am I going to do? Well, I went down, joined the Navy, and I had this brand new S10. Had like 1,200 miles on. I only had it for like maybe a month or something. And here I was in the Navy, and I'm like, oh, I'll just make this truck payment. So I took it out to San Diego where I was at, and fuel then was expensive in California. It was generally twice as much as anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But I had that truck payment, and my pay dropped from like, say, I don't know, $2,000 a month to $600, and that was virtually all the money I had. So that S10 pickup sat out there in the parking lot for like 9.5 months out of the year. It never went anywhere. It just sat. And I got orders to Japan, and I'm like, oh well, I'll just sell my truck. And everybody's like, oh, no. They were coming looking at it in San Diego like, it's got 1,200 miles on it. It's 2 years old. It's rusted out. I'm like, rusted out? What are you talking about? Oh, yeah, it's rusted junk, right? Like, I'm looking all over. Like, what are they talking about? There's no rust on the body. I mean, the thing looks brand new. And the rotors had rusted. Like, I never noticed it, but they literally had rusted where it had become like bubbling rust on the rotor from sitting so long in Point Loma, which is right there on the water.
Yeah.
And it was the salt air had pitted the rotors to death. I ended up having to put new rotors on the truck that had 1,200 miles on it.
Wow.
But
I've seen that. Yeah.
Let's see. Johnny C says I used to buy the San Jose Mercury newspaper too. Miss just regular local classifieds. I do too. And there wasn't so many people beating you up. And then the thing was, if somebody called, they were legitimately interested and they weren't trying to beat you down on the phone. You know, like some of the stuff I've noticed. Okay, so when Craigslist came out and that thing got hot and it killed off the auto traders and all that stuff, people got flaky on Craigslist.
Oh yeah.
But now Marketplace is like a whole new level of flaky, right?
It's like the new low.
I didn't know you could go any worse or higher or however you want to diabolical. Right? Yeah, there's, hey man, Are you sure you want to sell that for 200? Would you take $10? Like, if I took $10, I'd rather put it in my front yard and burn it. You know?
Yeah, I think the reason why is because people can be behind their keyboard and they don't actually have to go face to face with someone. They can just be as absolutely ridiculous as possible behind their computer. They're like, they're sitting there. Yeah, let me just put $10 on here and see what it's going to say. You know what I mean? That's the only thing I can think of.
Because Craigslist was bad because guys would set up meetings and then never show up.
Yeah,
right?
That happened a lot to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I did that a lot too. And I always wondered, like, he said, that guy sitting across the street, he's looking at me right now, and he was just wanting to check me out or something. I don't know what, like, it was weird. But then Marketplace got worse, and it's just like I don't even put anything on Marketplace anymore, at all. So, so Colleen says, talking about rust, you should see the rotors for my Charger. The video dropped today on Mopars, Mustangs, and minivans.
Yeah, I'll go watch that after we're done here. I'll check it out.
I was going to say, I'll have to check it out after we're done. Mexican Spec says, when they go low, we go high. They offer $10, you go to 250.
Yeah, I've done that. I've actually done that on Marketplace. If they just beat me down, I'll just go higher than the price that I put out there. And I don't think they notice it at first, That's funny.
I never thought of that. I have seen some of the freaking the cool stuff where the guy's like, yeah, you want to meet up? All right, meet me here, and then go inside the bank and take out the rest of the money, and then I'll meet you in the parking lot.
I've seen that one too. Yeah, I've never done that, but I've done the one where they offer, like, if it's $200 and they say I want 150, I'll go, okay, now it's 250. I've done that.
Yeah. Well, the white Ford truck that you helped me get out of the desert in Ramona, right?
God, that was a terrible day. It was so hot that day. It was ridiculous.
And that dude lived in like a dust bowl.
Yeah.
But the motor I put in that was, I built I don't know if I told you, it's a spec 93 Cobra 351 Windsor. Did I tell you that?
Yeah.
I had it on Craigslist for like, I don't know, 8 months or something. And it was factory part numbered, everything. Spec, right? It'd be like if you ordered a 351 Windsor Cobra motor in 93, this would have been in the motor. And they only came like in the full race version stuff. But I had all the correct factory part number, everything, and I pieced it together over 10 years. There was a guy at the same time selling a 93 Cobra that had got stolen, and they stole the drivetrain out of it. And I thought about buying it just to drop this spec 93 351 Windsor in there.
Yeah.
And that I called that guy about the Cobra, and he said, it's missing everything. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like motor and transmission? He said, no, everything. It's missing the front fenders. It's missing the Cobra brakes. It's missing the wheels. It's missing it. I'm like, so you're buying like a chassis, for $8,000?
Buying a name is what you're buying.
I got the Cobra emblem off the trunk lid, right? I was like, oh, all right, thanks. And I had guys call about that motor, and they'd be like, oh, $2,000. Like, dude, that this was like limited sold. Like, you had to work at a Ford dealer and know somebody to get one of these, and you're saying, $2,000 for the motor, and it's rebuilt. I mean, I probably had $2,000 in just rebuilding it.
Yeah.
And the last guy, same kind of thing. And I said, you know what, man? He didn't show up after like 2 or 3 times. He set it up and then didn't show up. All right, you know what? I'm going to put it in a truck. And the guy's like, oh, you can't do that. I'm like, oh, I can, because I just got Volkswagen emission to death and I needed another vehicle. So I got that truck and I dropped that freaking Cobra motor in there. And
that's when you were still living on that on base, like off the 805, right?
Housing. Yeah, it was at Navy Housing.
Yeah, Navy Housing. Yeah. Remember that?
No, it was a Cobra intake, Danny Boyd. It was legit. Like if you bought a 93 Cobra R 351 Windsor race motor, that's what you got. and it had the correct plate and everything on it. I ended up selling the upper intake manifold. I think it was $750 or something. And it's probably a steal today, but yeah, it was a Fox body shell, but it was a legit 93 Cobra. Let's see, Mopar Man, 1978. On Craigslist, I meet them at a busy gas station. Same with Facebook Marketplace, no issues. The big issues that I have is people won't show up.
Yeah, they won't even meet them.
To death, right? But before you even look at it, I had a guy. What did I sell? I sold my racetrack Honda generator. It was an old Honda 2200 EU or 2000 EU, real small one, like a suitcase size.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I had it on there $700 or something. A new one was like $1,500. And I had bought that one in 2005 for like, I think $500, right? And I had it listed for 700, and it was low hours. It only went to the racetrack and ran when I was at the racetrack. So it was like, I don't know, probably less than 2,000 hours on it. He showed up and then was like, "Hey man, I had to drive all the way here from Georgia. Can you cut me a break?" And I'm like, "Well, you're the one that decided to drive from Georgia. The price is the price, dude." "Oh, well, I'm just going to leave it." I said, "All right, see you later. Drive back."
Your drive was worthless.
Like it was like a 6-hour drive or 7-hour drive for this dude. But yeah, he wouldn't. He was willing to walk away over whatever it was, $20 or whatever.
It's ridiculous.
I sold it like the next day, but I just thought that was insane. Wasn't a 95 Cobra R engine? I thought the 93 R was 302. Actually, it was 93 351 Windsor. I had a 93 Lightning lower intake manifold. I had the 3-bar GT40 heads that were large chamber for the truck. And it was a lot of stuff that it took. It was essentially like a Lightning motor, but it had a Cobra upper intake manifold with it said 5.8 liter Cobra on the Cobra manifold. And it was like if you had a 90, let's say a 98, 99, they used to have the Ford Motorsport catalog. That motor was in there. You could have bought it for like $8-9 grand. But that's what it was. Let's see. Dakota's saying people just bug him on Marketplace. You got to have patience.
You know that as we're getting caught up here. I'll tell you a little story. You want to hear a little story that happened to me today?
Sure.
It's a crazy one, man. So on my way home from work today, I stopped by because here in Tennessee you got to buy your liquor at a liquor store, and they're only open at certain times, right? Which is new for me. I'm still new to that. But I was driving by, and they have a local liquor store here. It's on the way. I pull in, and everyone's outside looking at this car, right? And I'm just like, it's just some car. I go inside. The broad behind me, she's actually probably watching this because, she was talking to me and just about cars and stuff. And dude, she had a McLaren, like a real deal, like full blown, like brand new McLaren, right? And she was just talking back and forth to me, and then I guess she made a joke like, "Hey, you want to drive it?" I'm like, "Nah, I'll pass." And I think I offended her slightly, and then she goes, "That's a McLaren." I was like, "Yeah, I don't care really. It's just a car to me." I said, "Anyone could buy that." You know what I mean? I was like, "I'm just not into those things," And they're like, and I think she was like, "Really?" And then she was like, "Come on, I'll let you drive it. I'll do this. I'll do that. Whatever." And I told her, I was like, "Look, I'm more into the older stuff where I can buy it." I was like, I told her, it's like any asshole with money can go buy a car like that.
Of course she was bad. She was out.
I hadn't had anything to drink yet. I hadn't had anything to drink yet, but I was being nice about it. You know what I mean? And the guy behind me was and I told the lady, I kind of figured out after that. I think she was kind of hitting on me maybe, and the guy behind me was like, all about it. He's like, "Hey, let me drive your car. I'll drive your car. Hey, let me go for it." Right? And she just wasn't even having it, right? And I was but it was funny. It was the weirdest thing. And then I see her get into her. she's getting in the car, and the doors like do the little fold up thing, and then the trunk opens up and the whole thing goes into the back and everything, and then it was just an odd thing. It's never really happened to me, but I think I offended her, man, and she might be on here. She might be lurking on here, because I told her, I was like, look, come on to my tech talk, and tell me, tell me why I should drive your car. I've actually been looking for it all day. I was like, yeah, go to the HRA, and I told her about my page. I said I build the cars that I drive, and I just like, I'm not into it. And man, did I offend her.
Dude. And that's one thing that, I've been married now 16 years, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm like almost oblivious to it when I actually get hit on, because
it's stupid.
I'm not even thinking like that. I mean, if I was 25 years old, I'd be like, oh, hell yeah, but
yeah,
it never happened then. But now that I'm older and I'm uglier, and so you assume it's never going to happen, right? So it's like, man, what the hell is this chick so freaking talkative to me? Would you shut the hell up, And then you realize, oh, duh. She's probably freaking single and she's hitting on me.
Yeah, because I don't wear a ring.
I don't wear a ring either, because I smashed it on my finger one time and I was lucky I kept it. My finger.
Yeah, and that too, but I've arced one time, and luckily I kept my finger because of that. And I just it bothers me, right? I don't wear any jewelry. I just don't. I'm not into it, right? And I've been with my wife for 23 years, so I'm not going anywhere. And I just I didn't even know it until I got home and was telling Lisa about it. I was like, wait a second, I think she was trying to hit on me. And that's how long it took me to realize that she was trying to hit on me, possibly. In fact, I don't think I realized it. I think Lisa told me.
Well, see, my wife is the one that always picks up on it when it happens, because one, I mean, my wife is an Asian girl, so it don't look like we're together when we might be together, right?
Yeah.
And it looks like she might just be the next person in line. And she's the one that always tells me, like, that girl's hitting on you, right? Like, what? Nah. Like, really?
Yeah. I was telling Lisa what happened when I got back, and she goes, I think she's the one. In fact, I think that's how it went. She goes, I think she was hitting on you. I was like, what? No. I think I offended her because I didn't want to drive her car. I was not even interested in it. There was a whole big crowd around it, and I didn't even give it 2 looks.
You're like, get the fuck out of here. I don't go jump in your 6 car and drive off, right?
Playing the Slayer, you know what I mean? I don't know. Yeah. It just
totally wouldn't fit today's society.
No.
She's like, that dude's playing hard to get,
Yeah. And I honestly, I didn't even get it. I didn't grasp it, didn't figure it out. But she just, she really thought that she was something in that McLaren, which I think that's cool. I mean, she's a car chick. Yeah, whatever. Awesome. I'm down for it. But I offering, she goes, most guys when they have offered to drive the car, they're really into it. My one boyfriend, my ex-husband couldn't drive it, then my boyfriend could, and and you don't even want to drive it. And I was like, won't do anything for me,
So anarchy is freedom is saying, I'm 57, what's hitting on someone. They were hitting on you, like they were trying to get your phone number or pick you up.
Yeah, like let's go have drinks or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm naturally flirty just because I like to have fun. When you're standing in line for something, it's just, there's nothing more mundane than standing in line and watching your life tick away as somebody's trying to count out pennies at the freaking counter, right?
Oh,
and you're like, come on, So when I always get up there, I'm like, hey, how you doing? And I'll read her name and I'll say what her name is or whatever. And my wife always used to tell me, like, oh, you're really flirty with him. Like, I'm not flirting with him. I'm just like, I'm trying to get through this process as quickly as possible and it be as simple, right, as it can be.
So if the McLaren girl's on here, if I offended you, I'm sorry. But I don't think she's here. I didn't see her, but that was something interesting today.
Well, that is pretty interesting. That doesn't happen all that often to me anymore, especially now that I refuse to shave but once a month. So I look like a homeless bum most of the time, especially when Well, because 99% of the time, like I get cleaned up for our Wednesday night tech talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
99% of the time I'm covered in grease, and I got a sweatshirt on with a pair of pants that I have covered in grease 1,000 times, and I've
Mm-hmm.
washed them 1,000 times. So I look like
Yep.
I just crawled out of a homeless camp, and I don't get hit on anymore that much.
It's funny because I wear the same. I'll have degrees of dirty for me for the weekends. So like I have Friday night that I wear it, and it's not too bad. It's only a little dusty. I can wear that tomorrow. Now wearing it on Saturday means I got to go do all these errands. I don't care. Everyone else in my town they're all driving the Mercedes Benz, and here I've got grease on my hands just dripping off of me. In my face and my hair. It's all matted and greased and pulled back behind my ears. That don't care.
I
Don't
just
care.
remember like San Diego, we used to go to the Marine Corps Recruit Depot Auto Hobby Shop, the MCRD Auto Hobby Shop. And right outside of MCRD was my favorite place to eat in Southern California before I got introduced to Mexican food. And that was Carl's Jr., right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is like today is the trendy Hardee's.
Yes.
But back then was a completely different kind of burger joint. It had like a freaking standard compared to everybody else. It was a nice place.
Yeah, it was super nice.
Really
Yeah.
good stuff. And I would go in there covered in grease, and I'd wash up in their bathroom, and then just like leave the sink like black, right? the only thing clean on your whole body is your hands, and you're like, okay, I'd like a grilled chicken sandwich or whatever the heck they had that day, and I'd sit there just covered in grease with clean hands, eating the Carl's Jr. And that's why I always thought they did those commercials where they had like the dripping sauces coming out because they looked at me sitting at that spot.
That was me too. Then they combined the Carl's Jr. with green burrito. Remember when they did that?
Oh,
So
right.
Yeah, so it was green burrito and Carl's Jr. So you could go in there and get your $6 burger and your massive burrito in one. You know what I mean? You didn't have to get fries. It was something else.
Danny Boyd says that Ohio is so poor that when I'm dressed like that, the GD panhandlers still hassle me.
That's funny.
What is the Mexican spec is saying? Carl Karcher. He's talking about Carl Jr.?
Probably.
Or am I saying it correctly? Carl's Jr.?
Carl's Jr., yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. Yeah, that was one of my favorite places to eat if it wasn't like when I was introduced and learned about the carne asada burrito, I was wrecked for the rest of my life.
To this day.
Yeah, there's still nothing that's as tasty as fresh carne asada burrito. And my preferred ones is not so much the shops. I like the taco trucks at the Junkyard. They're usually the best because they're right there by Tijuana.
That's right.
Yeah. But man. Oh, okay. Mexican spec is in. He was the owner of Carl's Jr., Carl Karcher. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, neither did I. No. Mexican spec said something funny. He goes, "Supercar owners think that they are a step above us. They don't get the cars are crap. They don't get the cars are crap." Yeah, that was funny because yeah.
Well, what's those guys? They do the Grand Tour now, but they used to do another car show. Had Allman Brothers playing. Oh man, Jessica. That's the song that they played, but I can't remember what it was. But they're on Grand Tour now on Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
and they had whatever that show was. Dang it, I can't think of that show. Top Gear. Yes, thank you, Nicholas R. You remember they used to do them crazy challenges, but one of them was find like a clapped out supercar, and then they had to drive it across the country, just dealing with the supercarness of it.
Yeah.
And it was like literally, one of them overheated before they even got out of the parking lot. It was just ridiculous stuff, and they're having to keep these, 70s Lamborghinis and Ferraris together with like duct tape and baling wire. And it made me think of how cheesy those cars they really are.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they're so those things are so well, they're so stuck in the moment. Like they're literally a snapshot in time at that exact time, right? Like Lamborghini Countach. You think of it and you think, all right,
Cannonball Run.
Exactly. Appetite for destruction, long-haired dudes wearing some chicks' makeup, and it's a snapshot of 1987, right? It really is. And you can't pick that car does not fit in any other era, and they're just so stuck in time. And it was that whole Top Gear show was just so excellent. Maybe that's the $500 Ferrari challenge.
I thought you were talking about Top Gear, but I was going to say that, but I was like, man, because we watch Top Gear all the time for lunch. We watch all the stuff, in engineering at Edelbrock. We watch all those things. I was like, is he talking about Top Gear?
Yeah. Oh, I love Top Gear. It's just those guys were so great with the challenges, and the one they did with the supercars just made those supercars look so cliche and lame, right? Like he had like what did he have? Like a Mira? What is that? Lamborghini Mira? I think it's like a late 70s car.
I saw that episode. I saw that one. I saw that.
And then what's his name? Who's the guy that always Captain Slow that always shows up with the weird stuff, right? He pulls up in like I don't know, like a Rolls Royce or something. And it's like, dude, you're supposed to be a supercar. What's no super about a Rolls Royce? You're like, come on, man, But the Mexican spec. I'm in love with the Southern California Mexican food, but to him, because I think he lives in Mexico, like say Baja California or something.
Yeah.
But dude, you remember Tijuana? My favorite thing in Tijuana was not the Mexican food, was the hot dog stand that had the bacon on the wrapped
right before Revolution Boulevard.
The
one that you would go over the sewer, then you come back down. And then you would go up, and right before you got onto Revolution, it was on the right-hand side there, and they had those hot dog stand. Oh, yes. Bacon wrapped.
And we always used to hit that thing coming out of the clubs, man, and you're all liquored up, and I'm 18 and drunk, woo, and then you're like, hot dogs for everyone. Well, you might buy 50 hot dogs. It probably would cost $10, but then you might as well just hold a sign up to the crooked cop that's waiting on the other corner for you to walk down the street that you have money. And they bust you right there. I spent a night in jail down there with a Marine.
Really?
Yeah. I spent a night in jail because I didn't have any money to bail myself out.
I ran away from my night in jail.
Huh?
I ran away from my night in jail. They were taking me. I just took off running.
No, I ended up going to jail, and I saw the judge the next day, and it was me and this Marine. And the dude was like, hey, I've been in here for 3 days. If you let me get 8 hours of sleep, I'll sleep. I'll stay awake when you sleep. And I'm like, cool. And then, so I stood watch on that dude. And then I woke up I woke up from my sleep, and it was like, what is that noise? And I look, and that Marine is beating the shit out of somebody they were trying to steal my shoes while I was sleeping. And he just beat the shit out of them. Like, holy crap. And of course, this is Tijuana jail. Nobody's coming in there to break it up. Yeah. But man. All right. Well, hey, it has been 2 hours. We hogged up the last 15 minutes of tech talk with Tijuana hot dog sausage stories.
And the I've taken that supercar lady down a few notches. So
yes. It would be like the supercar Yugo story.
Yeah,
I don't know what you would do. What would you call that? The downplay, the supercar downplay. Yeah. Oh, I can read about those.
I was trying to be as nice as it was the nicest. Fuck you! I don't want to drive your car ever. I was just like, I'm not interested. It doesn't do anything for me, man. But all right, man. All right. Well, you guys all have a good Thanksgiving. If we didn't get to something, I didn't see anything that was missing. But slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. Once again, slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. I've been getting a steady number of questions, and I've been sending them back out. So thank you for that, and I hope I'm answering your guys' questions correctly.
Yeah, I'm tonight was probably one of my favorite nights.
It was good.
Tech Talk. It was just fun. We had a good flow of questions, and thanks for being here. If you
Yeah,
got a
yeah,
few minutes and you need some good Christmas presents, jump over to eBay, find the AHRA store, buy yourself some merch, and pummel your children and or parents with it, or any of the other above
yeah.
grandparents. Still wear clothes, right? So, all right. Other than that, we're out of here. So we're 4 minutes overdue. I owe you some overtime, Shane.
Whatever. You don't know me nothing, man. I have fun with this. But you guys all have a good Thanksgiving, and you guys take it easy, and we'll see you next
In
Wednesday.
December. Yeah, we'll see you in December. So
yeah. Hey, now what are we going to do for when we have? I'm not going to be on for that Wednesday before PRI. What are we going to do for that?
I don't know. I mean, we might have to miss it.
Yeah, that's the Wednesday.
We're
That's the
both going to
7th.
have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but all right, everybody. I'll see you next Wednesday.
You guys take it easy.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.